This podcast was brought to you by Meros Cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilises the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to the July episode of State of the Project Meros. With me, your host Cryptosi, and as ever I am joined by none other than the lead developer of Meros, Kayaba. Kayaba, good evening, how are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back as always. How are you doing?
I'm brilliant. I'm awesome. So much has happened in this last month. We've got quite a lot to get through. So, if it's all the same with you, I'll just like to crack on. Is that all right?
Sure thing.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing that I picked out was a GitHub commit, which was made on June the 25th. And it was you actually adding BIP39, which is a Bitcoin improvement proposal, 39. Now, can you explain what BIP39 is and why you feel that this particular proposal will enhance Meros or is needed within Meros?
Sure. So BIP39 is mnemonic seeds, which means instead of memorizing a random hex string or having to back up your wallet data, you just have to remember or write down 24 words. It's meant to make seed storage more human-friendly. The reason we use BIP39 explicitly, even though I personally have some annoyances with the scheme, is compatibility. If we look at Nano, who used a modified version of ED25519 for signatures. When they did signatures, instead of using SHA, they used Blake as a hashing algorithm. And this offered some speed benefits and possibly a security benefit, but it's also meant that they're just not compatible with existing software. So in order to promote a healthy and interoperable ecosystem and also increase compatibility with existing tools like hardware wallets, we really thought it was important to match the protocol exactly. This is just one of the more recent edits we've been making to our wallet system. We also added BIP32 HD wallets, which means that from this single seed, you can create thousands to possibly even millions, depending on how you use it, of addresses. And for that, we actually used a specification from Cardano. So that means you only have to back up one seed and you get all of your addresses and all of the coins associated with it.
Awesome. Just as you're talking about this specification that you got from Cardano, how do you come across these types of gems, the small parts of other projects that you decide you're going to add to Meros? How do you come across them? Because I'm assuming that you can't know all of the other projects in that massive amount of depth. So how do you know these things?
Sure. So I am on a few cryptocurrency technology Discords, things going there. I'm on a few Reddits that love to share some of the stuff. It also gave me some ideas on how I'm working on another project related to Meros, but I don't want to talk about that just yet. And really, you just see a paper or note it, and if I think it's interesting, I save it. When it came to this specifically, I believe I looked it up. I actually looked it up before I had a discussion with a service. I was discussing with possible Meros integration, and they said, we're not doing key management. It's too much of a pain. Your wallet better have it. Okay. And that's really what made me push to use HD wallets. But when I actually built HG wallets according to the provided spec. I actually had that paper already. It was already a to-do item. I think I came across it because I was Googling if there was a BIP32 for a signature scheme. Because Bitcoin's BIP32 is based on their signature scheme SECP 256K1. Or their signature scheme is ECDSA, but that's the curve. So when we're looking at EDDSA with ED25519, it's just not compatible. So knowing that this would be beneficial, I specifically Googled if there was a modified version. And I tucked that away and added it as a to-do item. And then when we were discussing with the service and they noted it's too much of a pain and they really wanted just something ready to go, I made it a priority.
Awesome. It is a good thing that you've done that. I guess for the services, are we talking about things like exchanges and the like, those sorts of services?
Services. When I talk about services, I'm generally meaning exchanges, payment processors, so on. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay, I want to move on. The second commit that I picked out was on the 17th of June, and it was when you made a commit which enabled GUI sends. It just got me thinking, really, how is the GUI coming along? Who is working on it, and what framework are they using?
So we previously had GUI sends enabled. This was more a re-enable. When we updated one of our data structures, we used to have two versions of a block lattice, which was inspiration from Nano. And now we have a more traditional transaction DAG, akin to Bitcoin transactions or IOTA. And the benefits of this were really just space savings in the transaction itself. You get half the amount of transactions, at least. And instead of voting on a bunch of transactions, you're only voting on the actual one transaction, because that one transaction is what used to be multiple transactions on the block lattice. So when we made that change, we had to update our RPC to work with it. And when we updated our RPC, that broke the GUI, so on. So we were re-enabling that send functionality with our new data structure. So when it comes to who's working on it, we're all working on designs. We already have like a quote-unquote spec sheet. It's subject to change. It's not anything permanent, just a general idea for the layout, and we're working on getting designs for that. And then a couple of developers have volunteered. One is part of the team for a JavaScript framework called Quasar. And really, we're just considering all options. We're going to go with what's best for Meros at launch.
Okay. I'm assuming if the developer who is working on it is part of the Quasar team, then I would speculate that Quasar is going to be possibly a front runner. Or is it still really up in the air? So right now, two different developers are looking into doing GUIs. In the Quasar dev, yes, he wants to use Quasar. And honestly, it looks to be one of the better JavaScript frameworks out there. I have concerns about it, as I do any JavaScript framework, but it does look to be a quality and viable option. The other developer who's looking into doing GUI work, he is personally not a fan. So unfortunately, while I think they will discuss design together and collaborate, I do not think they're going to work on development together. So that kind of leaves us with, let's see what happens, and we'll go with the best option. And if no matter what GUI we end up with picking, assuming that they both produce one, they're going to be both rewarded from the pre-mine. They put in work and they provide us with options. I'm not going to dismiss that. So the Quasar dev would be using Quasar framework, but I believe the other developers more interested in the classic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, with, I guess, the biggest lib being something like Bootstrap for CSS, nothing major. And of course, the GUI itself is handled not by Qt, but by some C code called WebView, which means we have a web page for a GUI. Right. Yeah. JavaScript front ends or interfaces, you said that you do have your own concerns with them. What concerns are they?
Generally, my concern is with space. They add in a lot of what's traditionally blue. So with Quasar, they've implemented tree shaking, which means if you don't use the code, it doesn't get included, and that's something I appreciate. That said, Quasar is also built on top of another JavaScript framework called Vue. So it's kind of like a framework on a framework. So honestly, the final size of the product, although it isn't my preference, I'm accepting it. My main concern is the amount of development dependencies. Because we already require C compiler, nim, make, CMake, get, do all our dependencies. Nimble, just already we have not fully original stack, but we do have dependencies I've not seen used in any other cryptocurrency. But now we're also discussing for GUI development, adding Node, NPM, the Quasar framework. And I guess that's my biggest concerns with Quasar right now, the amount of development dependencies it adds. That said, if they produce a quality and usable GUI, I'm going to be very happy, and I will definitely choose them. I'm not going to say because I am not extremely happy with this one aspect, I'll turn down a quality GUI. Because really that's what will potentially make or break our cryptocurrency, how the user feels it, interacts with it, how they're happy with it.
Yeah. Was there any particular reason why you're not going for a basic kind of Qt front end? Do you feel it's a bit dated, or is there any other reason why you're not going in that direction?
I feel like, although Qt has been around for a while, no, it does successfully stay up to date. My issue with Qt is it's a massive C/C++ library that kind of hijacks program execution. If I remember correctly, this might only be on old Qt versions. This might not be anymore, but Qt supplied like a custom main function, and you kind of had to write code that was called by Qt instead of you calling Qt code. And my biggest issue though with Qt, besides its size, which goes back to the bloat, is the corporate element of it. Qt is open source and free, but it's definitely a corporate project. There's definitely paid elements to it. And I personally am not interested in supporting something like that. WebView is not perfect. It does have quirks. But it's very lightweight and very feasible. It works on Linux, it works on Mac, it works on Windows. And that's something I'm happy with.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on. Thanks for that. I'm very interested in how the front end will look. Like you said, it's one of the things that will make or break the currency, so it is very important. But to move on, this month I noticed the return of a developer called Quellclef. I haven't seen him around since around January, and he's done some quite extensive work for Meros over the last few weeks. Perhaps he was working on it over these months. But anyway, could you explain what he's been doing for Meros? What has Quellclef added to the project?
So in the past, he has been a very talented Nim developer. He wrote one of the dependencies we use called finals, which helps us with safety when handling variables. But beyond that, he also was working on the block lattice we capped, our consensus tag, which stores every vote, which stores data difficulty updates, send difficulty updates, so on and so on. Basically, the elements of the consensus which get archived by the blockchain. And historically, we've only had verifications. So because of that DAG only had to support verifications. But now as we're adding the other types for the adaptive difficulty and for merit removals to make sure that merit holders aren't malicious, we have to support more than that. So what we've done now, or what Quellclef has done, is now the DAG supports elements. And one of those elements is a verification, one of those is a merit removal, one of those is a difficulty update. So he has abstracted the DAG to the point where we can now add these new elements to it.
Interesting. So how grateful are you for these developers who do pop in and help out with the coding from time to time? Like you said, sometimes we even write in quite important pieces of code. How could you tell me a little bit about how grateful you are, or how important these sorts of developers are to an open source project like Meros?
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
I cannot do everything alone. Maybe I could create a functional product, but it would be unsafe to do everything alone. In the past, people have reviewed the code and they've given me tips that have produced a much cleaner code base. Quellclef has written libraries in our Merkle tree library, which has been significantly helpful. We have developers popping up to work on the GUI and a designer who volunteered, and it's immensely helpful. I can't design a GUI. I can't develop a GUI. I can't review code. I'm going to think about my style as a good style. And really, it's also just a matter of speed. He wrote, Quellclef with the Merkle lib, wrote better quality code, and I didn't have to spend time working on it. And for the variable lib, at the time, I just didn't have enough experience with that specific part of NIM called macros in order to write that. So I'm immensely grateful for his help there. And for Meros to survive as an open source and decentralized product, we do need more developers. Because sure, you can have a decentralized network, even if there is only one developer, but that's still centralized development, which poses a risk to the future of the cryptocurrency. So I'm really hopeful that more developers will pop up, more will stay on, more will see the benefits of Meros, and we'll really see Meros grow not as just a community, not as just a network, but as an organization.
Awesome. Well said. As you know, and as the listeners will know by now, this being, I believe, possibly our 8th episode or 7th or 8th episode, we have questions that come in from the community. So if you've got something that you want to ask Kayaba or another member of the community or another member of the team or about Meros, then you can go into the Discord. There's a channel there called State of the Project, I believe. And in there, you can put your questions, and the best questions that come up every month, we will add them. We can't add all of them because there's usually far too many, but we just pick out a cross section. So the first question, who I didn't actually save the name of the person who wrote this question, but the link will be in the description. I'll put the person's name in the description. The question was, will Meros have some form of governance? And if so, which model is the most appealing to you currently?
So, I don't believe in DAOs. I feel like early whales dominate the votes. I feel like the initial team becomes the team. I feel like they just become immensely centralized and don't offer benefits. That said, Meros does have some elements of a DAO. When merit holders submit difficulties, updates to the difficulty specifically, those are then used, and the median difficulty is the one that's actually picked. So the network does vote on the difficulty. So we do have elements of a DAO already. But when it comes to actually, when we're discussing like Dash, where you have super blocks which mint out a ton of coins, I'm not interested in that. When it comes to the pre-mine, yes, I would definitely be interested in finding a decentralized way to handle that. And I think the best way to do that would be lock boxes, just little isolated pieces of code on Meros. They're similar to Bitcoin script, where you can lock funds up and only say unlock if these conditions are met. So in that way, you could create a council, you could try to create a proof of stake-ish thing, you could go for proof of work. But really, I think the best forms of a DAO are what happens off-chain. When it comes to Git, anyone can fork the code, anyone can create edits, anyone with permissions can give other people permissions, and the users can download whatever version of the client they want. And if the client implements a hard fork, then the coin will either upgrade, or it will split, or it will fail. But there will be one dominant network at the end. This kind of implicit opt-in, well, it's not implicit, it's explicit. You download the client, you run it, you opt in. And that's really what I think the best form of governance is. You either opt in or you don't opt in. And whatever most people opt into, that's the one that wins. It's basically democracy via code, despite the code itself being a dictatorship because the code's absolute. And then beyond code, because of course not everyone's going to write code. You need skills, you need funding. I'm definitely interested in setting up something like Monero. They don't have an official DApp. They don't have super blocks. But what they do have is a community funding system where anyone with Monero can donate. And that seems like a very quality project in a way for anyone to support who they think benefits the cryptocurrency. And it is possible to create a decentralized version of that using lockboxes and data transactions on Meros. And I would definitely consider turning over the pre-mine to it. So whatever the people think the pre-mine best goes, that's where it goes.
Interesting. Okay, the next question comes from Maxwell, and it's the dreaded question: When will the mainnet be launched?
We've actually had a few people join the Discord and ask this recently. It's a very hot.
It's because they know that the time is coming. That's why. Yeah. So people are starting to get excited. But yeah, go ahead. When do you have it in your mind? When do you think Meros mainnet will be launched?
The plan was to launch it at the end of Q2. Obviously, Q2 has come and passed, and we don't have a mainnet yet. And the reasons just for that are the code wasn't ready. We can probably get the protocol up in a month, and then with another month, we can make it user-friendly, get a GUI in there, and then do another month to not get full audits, but get code reviews, enough where we can be sure in launching it. But these things take money. There are setbacks everywhere. If there weren't setbacks, we would have launched in Q2. And until we know more, until we actually start the reviews, get more testnets done, I don't want to give out another date. Because if I give out another date and that's wrong, I'm the guy who's continually pushing back. And projects that do that fail. So for now, I'm just going to say TBD, to be decided. And as soon as I decide, I announce it. And if you want to see how the project's going, you can look on GitHub. If you want to speed up the project, we're always open source. You can always create a pull request. And when the time for reviews come, I am planning funding for that already. There's a few ways in which that's going to happen. But if you are unsure if we'll have funding, you can definitely pay for a review yourself when the time's right. If anyone wants to pay for a review, definitely don't do it now. Of course, I don't think anyone would pay for a proper review as they're going to be thousands of dollars. But I actually am interested if there's a way for the community to chip in. But I already have plans to orchestrate that and funding methods. I've actually spent the last week or so working a contract job, and that should help.
So what do you feel are the main things that are remaining to be done for Meros to reach mainnet? You did say about code reviews, but what are the main things that are still outstanding?
So we have full protocol docs. It's actually something I'm really proud of because I feel like a lot of projects are actually lacking this. And I'm happy that we already have them. And if you look under these docs, we have the full list of violations in the existing Meros node. Either because I coded it one way, and then when going over the docs, I realized it should be this way, or this was this wasn't needed, or it'd be better done this way. So we do have a list of quote-unquote violations. And beyond that, we just also have a list of features that aren't implemented. And then with the to-do, we have specific tasks that aren't related to the protocol, but are more related to organization, optimization, and features, not protocol. Like not having to recompile to connect to the testnet, adding OpenCap to simplify paying to people, where you just pay to people via X $ at server.com instead of their Meros address, and so on. So that protocol is really the best way to check what's left to do. But beyond that, beyond the protocol and some basic features here and there, it's really going to come down to the GUI.
Okay. So we're kind of running out of time now. So I guess the last question, which is almost always the same every month, is what do you have planned for the upcoming months? What type of developments do you have planned?
So over the next couple months, or next month, the first plan is to finish revamping the wallet. We've added Menomics, but we still don't fully use them. We have HD wallets, but they're still the old type of wallet. So really, we're just going to finish. My first priority is finishing that up. Then, since RandomX has had a few more of their audits completed, I believe it's 3 audits finished now, with 2 having feedback out of 4. I'm going to work on integrating RandomX, making sure our configuration is proper. We actually have a volunteer for helping with that too, someone who's a big fan of different hashing algorithms and ASIC resistance. And really just working on the consensus DAG. We have support for different types of elements, but we actually have to add these elements. Once we have the proper mining algorithm and merit removals, then we're likely going to start looking at a new testnet.
Awesome. Can I talk about off air just before we came on air? We were discussing testing Meros on a Raspberry Pi. Can we discuss that now?
Yeah, sure.
So the reason why I'm so excited about it is because I've recently got the new Raspberry Pi 4, and I wanted to test out to see if Meros would be compatible with it. And there are some tests that you said that we could undertake. I just really wanted to ask you, how do you see that going? And what sorts of things do you think we can gather by testing Meros on the Raspberry Pi?
So the biggest challenge isn't going to be its power. The new Raspberry Pi 4 is quite powerful devices, especially if you get ones with larger RAM. It's going to be the ARM CPU. I believe all our dependencies do work on ARM, and I definitely know NIM does. That's not going to be a problem. And the first thing, if you wanted to get that up, is just run the test suite we have. It's not fully complete, but it's good enough that if you run it, it's going to test the basic functionality. That said, it's all local to itself. If it tries to do something and then undo that action and it works, it moves on. It doesn't consider that it tries to do something differently than something else. So if you get X to Y and back to X, it passes. But then if a regular computer does X to Z and back to X, and that passes, the two won't realize that it's different from other computers. So for that, we're working on a new suite of tests in Python that aren't going to implement a new Meros node. It's not going to be that extreme, but it is going to work on a agnostic version where it has to meet the protocol no matter what. So it's not just your computer works fine, it's your computer works with the protocol. So between those two test suites, if those work, you could probably get Meros up. When it comes to mining Meros, though, that's a different story. Our RandomX modifications are going to take 4 gigabytes of RAM, unlike RandomX, which generally takes 2 gigabytes of RAM for the core data set. And of course, there's other RAM costs along the way between the OS, between actually running the hash. So because of that, you're already going to be filling up the RAM on a top Raspberry Pi 4, and it will likely not be enough to remain cost-effective. But I definitely want to have the main Meros node runnable on Raspberry Pis.
Awesome. So we could have Meros wallets running on Raspberry Pi. That's the plan. However, for the miners, 4 gigabytes is just not going to cut it. Is basically what you're saying, right?
Likely not. I mean, there's some things you could do with the OS to expand its RAM by using some of the like the SD card, but it's not going to be fast enough, most likely.
Okay, right. Well, Kayaba, once again, thank you so much for your time and your transparency with the Meros project. Keep up the great work. For the people listening, thank you for listening. Congratulations, you've made it to the end. And remember also that there is the tri-weekly update. So I'm guessing the last one was about 2 weeks ago. So I'm guessing the next update will be around the time this airs, which should be the second week of July. So 2019, second week of July 2019. So make sure you check out the tri-weekly update, which is on Medium. I'll be go ahead, Kayaba.
It's going up July 7th, if I recall correctly.
Okay, that's Sunday. Okay, that's okay. So that's Sunday, July 7th. So it will definitely be before this airs then.
Yep.
So yeah, make sure that you check that out because it's filled with loads of great information. There's often things in the tri-weekly updates that don't get covered in the podcast. So there are other things. It's not the same material. So yeah, make sure you check that out. Also, if you want to know more about Meros, you can check out the website. Link will be in the description, or join the Discord, and everybody will be in there. Kayaba will be in there. So there's just a load of places to find out information. The Bitcoin Talk forum post is actually starting to gather some momentum now as well. So be sure to check that out. You can get a good feel for how some of the OGs in crypto feel about Meros, because they're now starting to pop in and ask questions. So make sure you check that out as well. Kayaba, thank you again for your time, and hopefully we'll meet again in a month's time for the August update.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This show is brought to you by PivX, private instant verified transactions. With its groundbreaking zero coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivex.org.